So today I'm going to talk about how decentralized AI is actually redrawing the power map in how models are being deployed to users across the world, and how we're starting to see a shift from large monolithic AI providers to an actual emerging open ecosystem of AI development and deployment, and how decentralization can help that out. The main sort of thing here that Kava is announcing at Token 2049 in Dubai is that we've created a new model update for the current Kava AI model that is actually beating OpenAI and Anthropic and DeepSeek on specific on-chain benchmarks, which we'll talk about. And then with that and the privacy feature, it's actually surpassed 100,000 users. And we'll talk about where those users are coming from and how that's going. Um, First, just a high level of what Kava is. So Kava was a project that was launched with Binance Q4 of 2019. And it's been at the intersection of the Cosmos ecosystem and Ethereum ecosystem. A lot of the AI work that the Kava ecosystem is doing right now is built off of the previous success that it's had in the DeFi space. So Kava has secured some of the largest partnerships in DeFi. It has a native USDT integration. Every USDT that you see on a Cosmos chain like Atom or Say or Injective is actually minted on the Kava EVM and moved over to that chain. And the same goes, so we have an exclusive partnership with Tether to do that, as well as BitGo for WBTC. So when you see a native WBTC on Cosmos chains, that was issued on Kava and moved over via IBC. And then those assets and many other assets are integrated with the largest exchange providers in the world, like Bitcoin, like Binance, Bybit, Coinbase, KuCoin, etc., to allow users to be able to settle those assets on the Kava blockchain between the different exchanges and third-party custodial providers like Fireblocks, BitGo, etc. So Kava DeFi has been around for a while. As I mentioned, it's the only exclusive Tether partnership within the Cosmos ecosystem. There's a bunch of apps that have been deployed on it, a large community pool that's been built up over the last 3 years. There's only a few chains that actually have these large native assets deployed on it. We started doing cross-chain right away with Binance back when it was BNB chain. And so there's been over 2.5 billion in assets safely transferred between Kava and other chains. Bunch of assets on chain, low transaction costs, and this like native cross-chain architecture, that has been used for assets and we can leverage for data as we're moving into the AI space. And so as a result, Kava has had a bunch of integrations and partnerships with pretty much every major player in the space. And we're building on top of that now with AI. I'm just going to do a brief intro or high-level intro for how traditional AI works, and then what we're seeing in terms of how that work is being moved over into the open source space as well as the decentralized space. So at a high level, AI is basically an application layer, a cloud or on-prem layer to serve those models, and then the hardware itself. At the application layer, ChatGPT, Claude, DeepSeek are popular applications that are powered by companies that train these large language models and serve them to the users with varying performance. And what's interesting to note is that the number of parameters for these models have grown exponentially. And in around like 2021, 2022, there was enough parameter weights where these things started to get interesting and used. And now you're seeing a bunch of user behavior and actually, strong stickiness and addiction to intelligence as a service. And what's interesting to note is that there doesn't seem to be an upper bound on the amount of parameters that these models can have as long as the compute's there. And then these large companies are racing to build better and better versions of these models, which have evals run against them for various things like human language, math, and then the one that we're putting out, which is interaction with Web3 or blockchain related stuff. So at a high level, AI is obviously here and it's getting moved into every major industry, including blockchains. And decentralized AI, or sort of the actual work of taking open source and open weight models and deploying those on a blockchain, is what we call decentralized or DAI. And there's a ton of growth going on in that space. At a high level, the stack is pretty much the same. You've got AI, dApps, and agent layer. You've got a open model layer, and then you've got these DPIN networks, or D clouds, whatever you want to call them, that are hosting these things in a permissionless way, similar to a smart contract run on Ethereum executed by a full node. DAI is the convergence of two tech ideas. So it's blockchains and AI models, and you can't really you're not able to have an actual true decentralized system without it being run on an open permissionless blockchain. And we're seeing an expansion of the AI landscape. So there's a proliferation of projects in the AI dApp and agent space. A lot of different open weight, open model projects are coming out. And then we're seeing also a proliferation of compute and DPIN that are hosting these models. And so when we go now specifically into Kava AI and what is Kava AI focused on, the primary thing that we're trying to do as part of the general Kava ecosystem is create a decentralized AI model that can actually scale and serve intelligence as a service at a low cost at scale, which it turns out is actually a very difficult problem. And we've been working on this. We initially launched this at Token 2049 Singapore, and we've been working away at it. And Kava AI has now surpassed 100,000 users. We'll talk about those users and where they come from and what the value proposition is. And we're seeing a large, actually, portion of those users coming from around the world, but specifically Southeast Asia and the APAC market, which we'll talk about as well. All right, let's get through this. So at a high level, what we're trying to do, or what we're working on doing, is providing an end application to a user. You can go to it right now, chat.kava.io, and you can crack open that application and you can interact with it using a general reasoning model. So you can talk to it like you would talk to ChatGPT or DeepSeek. And the primary feature there is that you can use an anonymous mode. So all of the data, all of the information, any weird questions that you want to ask this thing are stored locally, either in your browser or on your phone. And you can delete those whenever you want. It's just stored locally on your device. Users have the option, if they want, to sign up and have that data stored on a SQL database somewhere, if they want. And basically the main value proposition there is giving user a choice of being able to interact with the model at low cost in an anonymous way, or choose to get a better model and store that information on an off-chain database, or pay and get an even better model. The other main value proposition here is that users can interact with Web3. So I'll fast forward to listening. So if you try and actually use the biggest models right now, like DeepSeek or Claude or ChatGPT, like you can just go try. It's not actually able to execute or reason well within Web3. Web3 isn't a gigantic use case. Of the 100,000 users that we've got, maybe 10 or 20% of them are actually on chain. But it is a significant use case, and it's a nice niche that nobody is like actually honestly tackling. And so what we're doing is training these models so that they're able to actually do things like connect to a wallet. So it can connect to an Ethereum wallet like MetaMask or Binance Wallet or OKX Wallet. And it can interface with a smart contract. So you can actually call a function and interact with a smart contract. Because you can interact with smart contracts, now it knows about ERC20s. You can transfer ERC20s around. You can swap ERC20s. You can call your balance on Kava chain, Ethereum chain, BNB chain. and then working on cross-chain support for that. So these like traditional models have an understanding of DeFi. They know what trading strategies are, but they cannot execute those trading strategies because they're not able to actually reason and interact with the blockchain. Once you have a primitive established where users can actually execute transactions using AI as an interface to do that, now you get all of that other stuff basically for free. And this allows you to be able to spot trends that are coming up, execute on those trends, and then create so-called agents that will allow you to monitor and 24/7 continue maintaining interactions with whatever strategy you're looking at. So like I said, within the Kava AI app, that's maybe 20% of the usage, but it's a solid use case, within crypto, and we're seeing a lot of traffic moving on that. Yeah. And basically, the biggest thing here is that, this was, the biggest thing here and what we're like actually trying to solve. So you can hear a lot of projects like Near or a number of other guys who are serving models in a somewhat decentralized way, and even all the way up at the level of ChatGPT or Anthropic. You can solve the problem of serving tokens. I don't mean like crypto tokens. I mean like tokens as they relate to models. You can serve them at some cost. The problem that we're trying to solve is being able to serve them at a low enough unit cost where a user is willing to pay more than the marginal cost of serving that token, and you can make a spread on it. There's a ton of work that goes into this. The team that's working on this is basically world-class in provisioning full nodes, which are themselves highly inelastic, very difficult things to work on. And now they're moving over to GPUs, provisioning GPUs at the metal level, and being able to pick correct models, train those models to work with actual Web3 products, and be able to serve those models to a user at a unit economic cost that makes sense and can actually scale. And that's basically an open question that a lot of companies still haven't been able to solve, even in Web 2. And then the other really interesting topic is how can we actually evaluate these models? Our primary focus is being able to create a benchmark that can evaluate how well a model actually executes against Web3 transactions. But it's worth noting, even when you go back to the very common evals that routinely, like you just saw OpenAI roll back a version of ChatGPT 4.0, right? That has a massive amount of usage. And these founders like Sam still don't have a good evaluation mechanism for when they launch a new feature. Is this better or worse than the previous model? And in the case of the rollback that they just did, they got enough user feedback that says this is worse that they're rolling it back. Anthropic recently rolled back another version too. So kind of the two really interesting areas that we're focusing on outside of just generally growing usage for this particular product within the Kava Web3 ecosystem is how can we actually provision tokens in the sense of model tokens at a low unit cost that can scale on a blockchain. So hard problem, working on solving that. And then how can we actually create appropriate evaluations to say, is this model doing a better job at allowing users to interact with Web3 and also just the other evals generally. So I think it's very early days. There's a lot of work going on, but it's interesting to note that we're seeing a lot of uptake from users who want to actually use a simple application in an anonymous mode or interacting with Web3 and currently, burning money and not making a profit at being able to serve those users and continuing to work to get it to a point where the unit economics make sense, which is ultimately going to be beneficial for the Kava chain. So that's basically the work we're doing at a high level. Thanks for listening.